Hi friends, my name is Tobel and welcome to a new Let's Play of Humankind. Brand new civilization-esque builder where we are working with the same developers who made Endless Legends and Endless Space. Now, this particular Let's Play is going to be focused on more of a scientific approach to winning the game. And so the first culture that we're going to choose will more than likely be Babylon. I'll talk more about those soon, but this is a bit different than your normal traditional Civ game. You don't pick a civilization right here at the start of a new campaign, but I'll try to explain as much as I can, and I will be going in depth in terms of like numbers and percentages and adjacency bonuses, so bear with me as we learn this game together. And of course, if you know something that I don't, please do share it with me in the comments below, and we'll kind of explore and learn this game together. There is probably going to be failure. I may lose this campaign, but that's completely fine because it's a brand new experience, and yeah, we're just going to jump into it. The interesting take on, well, one of the many interesting takes that Humankind has is you pick pieces of different cultures as you go through the ages in the game. So we might start out with some Babylonian culture, then we might pick a little bit of Roman up, maybe we'll pick up some French. You kind of combine and make your own unique story throughout the entire game. So I think the developer said there's over 1 million possible combinations with all of the different variables in the game. So yeah, a lot going on. Here is our character. This is our starting player or starting leader. We don't have a whole lot of opponents in this game, and I don't think you really need too many. So we're going to start off on a large world. I think I made it Pangea. So it's going to be one large continent. 70% of the world is covered in land, and I think that's all I'm going to really change. I haven't messed with too many settings just yet. Difficulty-wise, I don't know where this falls at. And since this is more of a kind of let's explore the game and learn about it, I don't mind on going on a lower difficulty. So I think Metropolis might be about the same as Prince or King from Civ 6, if you're familiar with that difficulty scale. Of course, Humankind would be something like a deity level of AI. So you can also apparently make a peaceful mode, which is kind of interesting, which I've not explored yet. But there we go. So normal pace, large world, not too many opponents. Let's get right into it. Now, as I said, I will be, exploring the game, so do forgive me if I mess things up. Anything that I say is probably not confirmed just yet, other than some of the very, very basics, because I've tried to avoid a lot of other Let's Plays from Quill or anyone else, just because I want to explore the game for myself. But here's a little intro story for us.
Most of which are about rocks and ice at sub-zero temperatures in a vacuum. Rather boring. However,
I love the
on a
writing
small
so
damp
far.
rock, there is a story that bears a second look. It's your story.
Yay!
But the first 4 billion years or so mostly concern amino acids. Not much of a page turn.
Reminds me of
But then,
Hitchhiker's
over
Guide.
time, the amino acids bond together, and things start to get interesting and a bit drier. A certain subspecies of hominid discovers that you can do more with a sharp rock than annoy your little brother. Tools and weapons are invented. The hominids begin to cooperate. Fire becomes a servant rather than an unpredictable force of nature. They learn to tan the skins of animals for clothing. They learn ways to record and probably exaggerate their adventures. Eventually, these tribes learn to build shelters and immediately hold the first barbecue parties. This is the dawn of humankind. Struggle and cooperation have been rewarded. The Neolithic era draws to a close. The whole world beckons. This tribe has come far, but the rest of their story is your story. You are the one who will build them into a great civilization.
There we go,
How far
Littlefoot.
will you push humankind?
That's where your family is, Littlefoot, just beyond the shadows.
Here is where
Well, there we
it
go.
begins. The
Where it
future
begins, huh?
that you carve through force of will and a bit of luck, out of the raw stuff of planet Earth. Alliances and enemies, wealth and danger, power and penury. May you leave the greatest
All right.
mark.
Listen here, Smarty. I don't know what penuary is, so I'm going to have to Google that at some point. But here we go, friends. This is our world. Kind of a neat little intro, and I like it. Gives the feeling of a story being generated. And I think that's what the developers pushed a lot for early on, is you're telling a tale of your civilization throughout the history of your, you know, your telling or whatever this happens to be. And so it's a little bit, I guess, maybe not quite as rote as Civ, but right now that's only because it's new and fresh. So here is our initial area. I do have a particular setting turned on that shows the production value of each tile, or I should say the output of each tile. So of course we have food, production, we have money as well, and science. I think it's called FIMS in terms of food industry, money, and science. That's kind of the 4 main resources in the game. And instead of starting off right away with a settler, which you might expect before, we actually are kind of starting out as a nomadic group, right? So humankind literally came from roaming nomads, and we're kind of in that roaming nomad phase. So we have some movement points up here in the upper left-hand corner. Whenever you move into a tile, it's going to tell you what the base movement cost is to move to that tile. So, for example, bottom left there, you can see that it costs 1 to move into some dry grass, rather. It's actually going to use all of our movement points to enter a river. So something to keep in mind, you don't necessarily want to go into a river tile on your very first turn of movement. You probably want to try to end it there. And I believe the higher we go, the more visibility we're going to get. So I'm going to move 1 tile at a time because you can reveal stuff like that right there, which is unfortunately kind of far away. The game thinks we can go down and then up in order to get to this. And we're going to try because up here, what that was showing us is some kind of a consumable, which we can pick up and use to grow our tribe if it's food, if it's what I think it is. Now, we start off in the Neolithic era, and there are many eras to the game that I can access through this button here. So we have, it looks like, 6 different eras in the game. And in order to advance through the eras, you need era goal stars. Now, right now, to get out of the Neolithic area and into the, what is this, classical maybe? Or the ancient era, we just have to have 1 star generated. And we can earn a star by doing one of these 3 things. We can either grow to 5 population, we can get 10 science unlocked from curiosities, which is kind of like a goodie hut. And we've got 5 hunts, or hunt 5 animals, which is kind of hard unless we have a bigger tribe. So it also gives us other valuables, though, so it's not necessarily something to completely ignore, the hunter star. There's also this competitive spirit era star, which is very interesting. If you start to fall behind in other civilizations, against other civilizations, you'll get like this catch-up star that helps you grow through the ages, which is kind of cool. So it helps you stay somewhat relevant. And we can also hover over our character's fame here, I think, if we're in the main image. Oh, not yet. We don't have any fame at all. So I can't see where we rank in terms of, I guess, compared to the rest of the world. So we have used all of our movement points here in our movement party, or sorry, our hunting party. So we're going to end the turn, and we're going to try to go up and then up again. Yep, there we go. So we just picked up 5 food, and if you notice here, we're actually growing another part of the tribe, another population, and we have like, this is kind of an army almost, where you're able to hold up to 4 different types of units in your little mobile army, and you can rename it to whatever you want. It could be hunting party, it could be just a party. You know, we'll call this the maybe the Donner party. So if anyone gets hungry, we'll have a lot of food, but that is where you're able to kind of grow and expand. And once you have a new, kind of a new settler here, or a new tribes member, you can split them off and form them into a separate group that can go out and scout on their own. So pretty cool stuff. Let's see, what else can we do? We can also form an outpost, found an outpost, I should say. We can't do that without influence, though. And we can generate influence early in the game by discovering curiosities or hunting, or probably some other special events that randomly pop up during your initial steps at exploration. So once we have 5 influence ready, we're going to have to figure out where we want to put down our first outpost. But we'll deal with that when the time comes. Ooh, unfortunately, it's going to cost 2 movement points to get into this river. And I really don't have anywhere else to explore, so I'm going to have to kind of blow the next turn just getting onto this river. But I really do want this this food, so we're going to go ahead and spend a turn. In early game, don't feel like you have to rush to put down a city. You really don't. From what I'm gathering, this tribal period is kind of normal. So there we go. We actually just found a freshwater harvest, so we got 15 food, and thus we've grown our tribe with a second tribesman or tribes unit. And if we click on the unit, we can actually split them off and have them separated. So you can keep them together to make a more powerful hunting party, or you can cover more ground as kind of a new unit of explorers, which is what I think I'm going to have them do.
Even those who have disappeared may have done
so there we
something
go.
very clever.
We just found a curiosity, and we got 1 science, which gives us 1 out of 10 points towards this knowledge star. And we also got 5 influence. So now we can actually talk about putting down a territory or a outpost. So whenever you choose the outpost button, it's going to show you some suggested areas. So this is similar to, you know, a suggested city foundation location from Civ 6. So if we happen to put a city here, for example, the tiles adjacent to this new possible outpost would generate 15 food and 3 production. That's pretty awful production. So I don't think I really want to settle there. Over here, the game tells us that we would get 10 and 11. And I guess it must be calculating what's in the fog of war, which is kind of interesting. So we know on the other side of this tile, there happens to be a little bit more production, because right now there's only 2 here, and that's kind of it. So there's not really a ton. Now, something else to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily have to expand exactly where the game tells you, and we are eventually going to be putting down districts, and districts, much like Civ, give you some kind of adjacency bonus. So that's going to be something we maybe keep in mind. For example, if I put the equivalent of a production district here in this particular tile, everything around this tile would get a +1 bonus. So all of these would get a +1 bonus. So that's a lot of production if we put a production tile here. If our city is here, we could put a food bonus building. I think it's a farmer's quarter here, and get a +1 bonus on all the adjacent farming tiles. So actually right here in this dip, seems like a pretty decent spot for a city. It's not immediately great, but I'm kind of thinking ahead for my future expansion. So the problem is you do need some early game production in order to get things going. So I think it's a balance between finding a good spot and thinking ahead towards some expansion. And this is part of what this early Let's Play is going to be about. We're going to be exploring and figuring out what goes where. Now, whenever you put down an outpost, you're basically claiming this section of territory that the outpost resides in. So this checkered line here would be all of our territory. And on this territory, we also have some horses, which we need to get the domestication technology in order to exploit this resource. But that means we actually could have access to mounted scouts pretty early on, and that could be very, very useful. There's also some science here, because I think it comes from... No, this must be from the horses, not from dry grass. So I think when it comes to actual tile exploitation, you have to have a district next to it. So we'd have to have something here or here in order to actually grab this science. So we'll talk more about that later on, but I think I'm going to try this out. We're going to test this out. I'm going to place down my first outpost right here in this little divot. And there we go. So the outpost of Copernicus has been placed. Because we have such crappy production, it's going to take 7 turns. If you have much higher production, of course, it would take far fewer turns for that to get completely built. But while this is happening, we can still continue to explore the map. We don't have to sit here and do anything. I also believe, one thing I also might have messed up here. The size of your army determines how quickly the outpost gets built. Question mark in the air. That could be a maybe. But I believe I read something like that. And one way to find more information out about that is there is a built-in Humankind encyclopedia. Glare warning. My monitor is a 4K monitor, so this is super freaking bright for me. I don't know if it's blinding for you all as well. It's also really hard to see. But if you go into the corner here, we could type outpost, for example, and talk about the outpost mechanic. God, it's so hard to read. The outpost can be built, all construction. There was something about how many people... part of the construction meter will automatically be filled based on the combat strength of the army that placed it. Okay, cool. So, yeah, the stronger the army, the better that would have been. But that's fine. Those are lessons learned, and I'm okay with it. So, we are out of movement here. We're out of movement here. Let's go ahead and end our turn. And I'm going to move this hunting party over to the wheat field in order to continue expanding. But you'll notice a little tiny chat box symbol, which means there's a special event. you'll have these come up every so often. So the shift to fixed abodes hasn't been easy for the tribesmen and women who've settled in the outpost, but they've persevered, and now they now think of this land as their home. It's like super late, and I'm exhausted from playing this game all day. When they discovered that one of their number had been hoarding mushrooms he'd found in a nearby cavern, it was a great blow to the spirit of the tribe. Now they want to banish him for his greed. So do we banish this guy, protect him, or retain the mushrooms themselves? He'll leave the settlement, but he'll leave the settlement but remain part of the tribe. His days will be dedicated to learning more about this strange species. So this would give us 2 science, a flat 2 science per turn early in the game. Protect would give us bountiful on Copernicus for 10. And this is kind of a little tag, like you see here in the Downer Party. Copernicus would get the bountiful trait. I think bountiful gives a 10% food bonus, maybe. Or we can banish him and get a discount on the city defense research cost. Now, because early game we are trying to get as many technologies as we can, 2 science at the end of the day is not a lot, but early in the game I think it's going to help quite a bit. So I'm going to grab retain. So he's going to leave the settlement, but he'll spend his days learning all about mushrooms. So he becomes the mushroom man. We've kicked him out of our homes and said, peace out, no more stealing mushrooms for you, buddy. Meanwhile, I'm going to continue having my little tribesmen down here explore the world. And you can see that we're actually going to end the turn on a river. We could also attack here. Now, attacking in the game is kind of interesting. It's no longer just, it can be kind of easy, but here's a preview. If you're clicking on your unit and right-clicking or hovering above an enemy, you'll see a preview of your strength versus their strength. So we're slightly stronger than this deer. So if we right-click, we actually get the option to either automate the battle or control the battle manually, which is really fascinating. So whenever you go into battle, you're able to manually choose where you can deploy your units. Now, there are some bonuses here. So, for example, in a forest gives us a combat strength against ranged attacks. You can see that tag right there. But otherwise, there's no other bonuses. There is a crossed river, or crossing river. This reduces our combat strength. So, in theory, if we position ourselves here and force the enemy to be here, they would be losing combat strength trying to attack us. But just sitting in the forest does not look like it gives us much. Now, if we get high ground above our enemy, I believe that also gives us a bonus, but at the end of the day, I don't think we can get there because this cliff is just too high. So we have, actually it is not too high, and the enemy deer started farther back. So let's try to claim the high ground, Anakin. And there we go. So we were defending on higher ground. I don't know if it tells me that we get more strength. There it is right there, from high ground. So we get +4 from being on high ground. And the deer down here, you can see in the tooltip up there at the top, it's crossing a river and it loses strength because it's damaged. So we are going to beat the crap out of this deer. And we only lost 20% of our tribesman health. And we did gain a little bit of influence for that as well. So pretty fancy stuff. Now, as you can see here, we're getting a lot of these different types of stars. We want to try in theory to focus on one, but it's really not always up to you. It really depends on the kind of RNG you get in the game. So we haven't gotten a lot of food, so we're going to just take whatever we can, wherever we find it. A little bit of nuts here, so that gives us 10 more food towards the growth of our fancy tribe, the Donner Party. Donner Party of 7. Okay, out of movement here. You can also turn on Auto Explore. That is an option for us. But I think early game, especially an early new game, I want to control that myself. A little bit more food, lovely. Wild berries for +5. So both of these tribes could separately get enough food to grow. So that'll be quite helpful. We're out of movement points up here. A bit stuck as well. 4 more turns until Copernicus turns into a outpost. And we really don't even need to do much with an outpost early on until we move towards the next era. So the fact that it's taking a couple of extra turns isn't the worst thing in the world. There we go. There's a little bit of extra food. We'll have to get that on the next turn. Meanwhile, up here, I kind of got us stuck because we're kind of trapped behind different rivers. So let's go ahead and just move on to the river tile. Ooh, that's a pretty big reveal. God, this map is so pretty, though. Look at that. These tiles, by the way, are really strong. Now, I don't know the comparison. If you're a big Civilization player, you'll know about, especially if you watch like Potato McWhiskey, they talk about the total output of a tile, like just a number. So like a 3 or 4 tile, a 4 tile in Civ would just be fantastic because, you know, whether it's 1 food, 3 production, 2 food, 2 production, you're getting a lot of value out of a tile. So obviously some of these tiles are just plains, right? Just a +1. So in comparison, the ones that we're seeing over here, for example, this crater, or is this a stone field? Stone field and a river is giving us a +2 food and a +1 production. These are really powerful tiles. This particular tile here is a stone field river with a waterfall, which seems to give us 3 food. Now, I guess the waterfall must add... Yeah, there's another waterfall up here, the same thing. So 3 food, 2 production. This might be a fantastic place for a city/settlement, right? Because we've got so much. In fact, if we just hover over... Oh, we don't have enough influence. We can't even pretend to look at what this might be, but I'm seeing that there would just be a really great, fast, quickly built outpost if we placed it right here, for example, because it would be adjacent to, what, 6 food and 4 production. And from there, you can kind of expand outward in whatever direction you wanted. We could put down I don't remember what the tile's called. I think it's a craftsman or a maker. I think it's a maker's district is the equivalent of an industrial zone. And that would give some nice bonuses to this mountain. The mountain is workable, by the way, so you will get 3 production off the mountaintop. All right. Let's go ahead and end this turn and move on to some lovely food. Just 5 food, nothing too fancy. Quite a bit of food over here as well. And there's a lovely big batch of 15, so we've up to 3 out of 5 population. Continuing, I'm going to explore this entire plateau because this seems like it would be quite lovely. Curiosity here would give us a bit of science, but I think I want to continue exploring. Oh, this is actually a sheer cliff, so we're not going to be able to get up here. Interestingly, this is a new dynamic, by the way, because we did not have this in prior Civilization types of gameplay, right? Where normally your workers would just simply move from here to here, right? But because this is like an elevation of 2 instead of a smoothly sloping hill like from here to here, this is more of a sheer cliff face. So if we tucked a city right into this corner, it's completely safe from melee attack on all of these different tiles. I think ranged attacks could still hit, but in terms of just protecting yourself from enemies, the geography of the local area seems to be really, really important. So I just love any new tactical aspect because, you know, to be honest, a lot of the Civilization builders out there have kind of been tried and tested and you know exactly what to do at what step of the game. It's like a chess match where so many of the turns have already been kind of preset. There is a bear over here. This bear is aggressive based on its little thunder symbol, lightning symbol, I should say. We lost all of our movement because I had to move us on the river, but we will get this curiosity next turn. Meanwhile, you guys are up to 2 in terms of how many tribes people. I think I'm going to split off again because I like the idea of just more tribes people exploring more land. Now, since this group already has 10 food, I'm going to try to move them over to this. Let's see, this will take us pretty much the same amount of turns. I actually think it's going to be a little bit quicker if we go this way. So let's go ahead and go this way. And I'll talk about as we're passing these new... Oh, more food. Lovely. I don't know which way to go now. As we're passing these areas that have a question mark, I believe this is a resource we just don't know what it means. Like, this is probably iron or copper, and we just don't know how to exploit it or even what it is. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. We got a little chat box, a world of flame. In the distance, a thin cord of smoke curls up into the clear blue skies. Fire, calling for a few tribesmen. You run closer and find a bunch of people who are sad. You're about to direct your men to put out the fire with loose soil when you see short, shadowed figures running away. Youths. They could become part of your tribe if you give chase now, but it would mean losing the secret of these really fancy buildings. So we either get a reduction in city defense research or we get a new army. I think the new army is absolutely 100% needed because that would put us out of the Neolithic era. So once we get this, we now have our 5 out of 5, and thus we are able to choose a culture. So here in the fame drop down, we're actually the first civilization so far to unlock the next era. So that's kind of awesome. So now that we've done this, we're able to choose our starting culture. So we have tons of different cultures here. I think there's, math is hard, but it looks like 10 different starting cultures. And this is kind of what I mentioned. As you go through history, you're picking up little pieces of cultures here and there. So we might start out as Egyptian, and then maybe we grab a little bit of Rome, then maybe France, then maybe the United States. And each of these will kind of leave an impact on your civilization. So it's such a really interesting aspect of the game. So as I mentioned, this is going to be more of a science-focused Let's Play because I'm going to try to learn the game based on not really one type of victory, but one type of idea at a time. And Babylon is a pretty safe bet for me because science has always been, pretty easy to and straightforward to understand. So the Babylonians, as you can see, have one passive bonus. So each time we research a technology, we get +2 science in the capital. So that means that we're going to be wanting to research everything as much as possible, I think, especially the cheap stuff. Eventually, I'm sure we're going to want to laser focus down the tree for one particular item. But at the start of the game, we're going to try to get everything as cheaply and as quickly as we can in order to kind of snowball this brilliant philosopher bonus. Now, each type of culture seems to give you one unique building, one unique unit, and then one passive ability. So we get the astronomy house, and the astronomy house gives you +3 science per adjacent farmer's quarter. We'll talk more about that once we have a city built. On the city or the outpost, for every one researcher we have, we get an extra food. We also get extra science, and then we also just get an extra researcher slot in general. And this is in the city itself. So for each astronomy house, we get +1 researcher slot, which gives these other bonuses. It also counts as, does it count as farmer's quarter, counts as research quarter? Interesting. I think that might mean that it gives farms bonuses as well. We'll have to test that out. Our unique unit down here is Sabu Sakasti, a levy recruit. They're armed and trained to fight in exchange for access to temple-owned land. Interesting. They're guardian, so they're stronger when standing on a friendly district, and they're anti-cavalry close combat units. So combat strength is increased when fighting mounted enemies. We also are going to need the bronze working technology in order to exploit copper for this to work. I think that's the resource symbol down there in the bottom left. You can kind of see that little spool down there. I believe that's the resource copper. So in order to build these guys, we're going to need access to copper. We also lose stability, which I'll talk about here in just a bit as well. But here's some other ones just to kind of give you a comparison. Oh, really important. It also gives you an overall orientation and affinity for your gameplay. So Babylon has a scientific type of affinity, which means we're going to get some bonus to science related things. We'll talk more about this in detail, but some of them are expansionist, some of them are combat. Here's one that's more aesthetic or culture based, I believe. So the Confucian school gives you a bit of stability. If you noticed, we actually lose stability if we build our astronomy house, while the Confucianism and Zhao gives you +8 stability, so quite a bit. Wow, this is actually really good for science too. +5 science per adjacent mountain. That's fantastic. Are there any locations where this would just be absolutely stupid right now? Do all 3 of these count as a mountain? They do. So this would be at least one here would count as a nice +10. We also have another +10 over here. There's really nowhere that seems to be completely surrounded by mountains. It's kind of like just 2 mountain edges. Whoa, seriously? No, I'm sure that's actually just the map that's unrevealed. Okay, so that could be kind of interesting, especially if you're settling multiple cities, because you can only have one outpost / city in each of these territories. So a city here, and a city. This actually could be a really good civilization for us. This is basically 30 science just from the mountain adjacencies alone. Something to keep in mind. Let's go back into that tree. What else you got for us? 1 research slot on city or outpost. I think we'll stick with what we're going to have, but that might be a good next playthrough, is the Zhao. They're actually not even science-based. They're, looks like aesthetic-based. They receive more fame when earning Aesthete-era stars. Cool beans. Phoenicians are a merchant type of affinity. The Olmecs are also aesthetic. Nubians are merchant. We've got the Mycenaeans. Hittites, Harappans, Egyptians, and then back around to Babylonians. I didn't mention the poor Assyrians, but there you go. So let's just go ahead and we'll try out the Babylonians for fun. So we're going to confirm that we want to be Babylonian. We get some cool purple outfits. I'm digging it. And there we go. So now that we have confirmed ourselves to be Babylonian, we are able to upgrade our outpost into a city as soon as it finishes doing its creation. So 2 more turns and we'll be able to start that process. Again, you don't necessarily need to be there for this to happen. We have a bit of spare food right next to our Donner Party. So I'm going to see if this gives us a nice upgrade. The refugees, I'm actually going to send... Oh, they're going to eat my food if they go that way. Let's send them down this way and then this way to get them out of the way. Okay. So we're pretty well split. The era change, by the way, doesn't take effect until you end your turn after you've chosen your specialization or your culture. So there we go.
The challenges of a young civilization. It's hard keeping up with the neighbors when they have the wheel and you don't. Humankind learns quickly that everyone contributes. If you're terrified of wild animals, you can grow lentils or catch fish. Tribes settle towns. Towns develop markets, and markets begin the exchange of goods, services, and most important, rumors and hearsay.
Most important,
This
rumors
means
and hearsay
more than just
are
markets
always the
for
most important.
Babylonians. It's also the beginning of mathematics, astronomy, and a set of codified laws that I wouldn't want to be caught breaking.
That's right. Hey, for my history buffs here, is the Code of Hammurabi, is that from ancient Babylon? Help me out here. I think so. I kind of think so. So codified laws is definitely in our genetic history, although we are not forced to do that. So here we go. We are now in the ancient era, and now we start unlocking goodie bits for the game. You can see that we've got a different kind of layout over here. We also have our research tab. So let's take a quick peek at the tech tree. And it's pretty impressive. It's pretty hefty. A lot of the items definitely seem to kind of flow together. So calendar, for example, leads into writing, which leads into philosophy, rhetoric, theology, alchemy, right? So it kind of makes sense. Up here, it just seems to be more science-based items. Down on the bottom here, kind of, again, maybe pulling a little bit off the old traditional stuff. And actually, Civ 6 flowed very similar, right? Some of the sailing stuff was up here, if I remember right, but city defense, bronze working, fighting types of things are along the bottom. So the tree itself is relatively big. We are in different eras, and I don't think you can research something that's outside of your era. I'll have to double check on that. So the medieval era, the early modern era, we've got mercantilism, movable typeface, patronage, siege cannons, encyclopedia, scientific method, wireless telegraphy, free trade agreement, computing, yada, yada, yada. So a pretty hefty research tree. I don't think it's quite as many technologies as Civ 6, but I still feel like there's more independent things going on with this game so far than Civ 6 had going for it. So first things first, we get to start researching a technology, and it all says 0 turn. Do we get a free technology? That can't be right. I would assume not. Maybe it just doesn't, we don't have any, we actually don't have any research right now because we don't have our city. That makes sense. So this is never going to research until we unlock a city. That's fine. That'll take a hot minute. First thing I'm going to probably do is just grab domestication. Since we did unlock horses, or we do have horses, we want to grab domestication. So let's close that down and let's take a look at our new screen here, our new era score screen. So now we have to continue earning these era goal stars, but now we have a ton of possible era stars, right? So there's 7 different categories of things you can do to earn stars. 3 stars can be earned in each category, so that you can have a possible of 21, but you only need 7 to move to the next era. And because we happen to be a science-focused type of civilization, we get a bonus fame score if we focus on scientist-related stars. And in order to get scientist stars, all we have to do is just straight up unlock technology. So research like crazy, generate science like crazy. That seems to be what we need to focus on. The other items, whoops, did I click away? I think I did. The other items are expansionists. So own 11 territories. 11 territories? That's crazy. Fair enough. We've got Aesthete, reach a total of 600 influence generated. I think it's a lifetime kind of thing, not pulled up at once, but I'll have to double check on that. Builders have 6 different districts. Agrarian have 12 population or units, 550 money, or 6 military units destroyed. I think the first 3 here are going to be relatively easy. The territory, the builder especially, the early population, these 3 are probably going to be the 3 that we use along with the 3 from our science, and then one random one depending on what the game throws at us. Deeds, by the way, while I'm here, deeds are kind of like unique achievements that you can get during your gameplay. So, for example, if we just explore the world and discover a wonder, I think any wonder, we would get straight up 50 fame. If we own a nuclear weapon, we would get 50 fame. If we are the first person, or no, if we build a railway connecting 2 cities, we get 100. Some of these are you have to be the first person. So, oh, they're actually different. Oh, that is interesting. These are randomly generated, I think, between gameplay. I've seen this one before, but I don't see ones relating to some of the wonders I've seen. There's some that say be the first person to do X, Y, or Z. Spread your influence through an entire continent. We'll talk about influence here in just a bit. Yeah, actually, none of these say you have to be the first person. It just happens to say do X, Y, or Z. Okay, cool beans. So we'll talk about those later on. Fame, by the way, I really haven't talked about the end game stuff. Fame is kind of your end-all, be-all. And interestingly, just because you do something and I guess just because you trigger the end game doesn't necessarily mean you win. So you could rush to a science victory, traditional science victory, by launching, I think, a Mars lander. However, if you don't have enough fame, you don't win the game. So you not only want to time your end game event well, you want to have the most fame among everyone. And again, if you want to go to that blindingly white screen, which it's not really great to see on this playthrough, but if we talk about victory, a hollow victory, society, game content. Oh, I actually don't know where this is going to be at. How to play. I think it's under how to play, objective. There's like a FAQ that talked about how to win the game. How do I win the game? Right there. So the goal is that the game will end after a fixed number of turns. I'll try to read this out. I know it's really hard to see and I apologize for that. Every player but one has been eliminated. A player researches every technology. A player earns every era star from the last era, or they send a mission to Mars. Triggering the end, though, does not mean winning the game. Only fame determines the winner. So no matter what, fame is super, super important. So focusing on getting those unique unlocks here would be a great way to get extra fame, along with making sure we get all of our scientist stars, because these give us more fame per hit. Let's see. Earn more fame. Era stars unlocked this turn would grant 150 fame. I don't know if that's each one or all 3 total. Okay, there we go. We've got one more turn until Copernicus turns into a city. Let's send our settlers out and about. Did I lose the food that was here? I could have sworn there was food right here. Oh, did somebody eat it? I think it went away.
Come over here.
We'll have you guys continue exploring to the west. There is a couple of interesting points of reference here. There is a silk deposit. This actually gives a adjacency bonus, I think, to the maker's quarter. It does. 2 industry per silk on a maker's quarter. So if we put a maker's quarter on this, or is it only adjacent? I think it might be adjacent. There's also a layer here, which we can use the ransack ability in order to get some goodies. So we'll probably send our little exploration group over to this evil layer of destiny. You guys, I'm going to have you focus on this deer for now. I'm going to try to use the instant resolution. We're overall stronger, so we should win this easily. Yep, we lost about 45% of our unit, which is kind of expected. I believe in order to heal, you have to be in friendly territory. That's also brand new and makes you kind of think about your aspects of your gameplay. For the Donner Party that we've been having for quite some time, I believe you guys will continue to explore to the southwest. And I'm going to use you as our kind of our primary exploration group here. Oh, we still have somebody down south I forgot about too. Let's just keep trying to move down into better visibility. This is Ebony. 3 industry per Ebony on the administrative center, and 3 industry per Ebony on main plaza. So I wonder if this just means once we exploit it, our home plaza, which is our home city capital, gets a wee bit of a bonus. I'm not sure. Oh, there's Ebony actually in the district. No. In one district over, one territory over. I think this territory down here will be the next territory I try to grab. I love these combo tiles. They're so strong. And this entire area seems very defensible. It seems like there's one easy way up and down. Maybe back here. No, actually behind here is all sheer cliff face. No one can get back in here at all. So maybe a city right here would be great, because we're getting 3 and 2 and 3 and 2. And then an industrial center here, which gives us adjacency bonus, increasing the industry, and the farming quarter over here, which gives us farming bonuses. Not a ton of food, but still, this seems like a great spot for a city. Awesome, awesome stuff. Right, so I'm telling you what, I'm going to put this hunting party on automatic exploration. Off we go. I'm going to do that for a couple of units. Oh, not these guys, because I want to manually go to this layer in another turn or 2. You guys are going to come home to heal up. One interesting aspect about units in your city is that if you're building a new unit, it actually is going to consume a population, which is a new theory. In the older Civ games, if you build a settler, that would basically eat one of your pops. But now, if you build any kind of unit, it eats a pop. Whether it's a scout, whether it's a warrior or an archer. The difference, though, or the exchange, is that you can recycle units and disband them in order for the population to kind of return home. So I'm going to bring these refugees home to our new city and kind of give it a bit of an early game population boost by returning them to their home area. We'll kind of test that out and see if it's a good strategy or not. Also, you'll see that these units have turned into scouts now. So there's no more food. That might have been why we don't have any more food. There's no more growing. It's just that scouts are now unit 1 out of 4. So we have all these different scouts. I'm going to probably return both of these home and put them into our new city. And speaking of new city, I think I'm going to go ahead and put a cut right here at right before we get into the next part of the game, which is starting your first city. Again, we are going to be talking more about the science types of victory and exploring that aspect together, but I think this is good enough for one video. So thank you so much for joining me. Of course, if you do like this video, hit the like and subscribe button. I will continue this series of Babylon. Well, so it's not going to be Babylon forever. We might be Babylonian with a little bit of French culture. Who knows what we're going to do coming down the road. So thanks so much for joining me. As always, until next episode, take care.